Welcome, Slayer the Alchemist, and welcome to another Dudes Talking Metal. And we're here today to remember Paul Dianno, the original singer for Iron Maiden. Paul has just recently passed at the age of 66, and we wanted to get together here and share some of our thoughts and memories of Paul Dianno. Butch was unable to join us today. I recorded him earlier, so we'll be splicing him in towards the end of the episode here. But Paul, I mean, what's there to say about Paul Dianno for people our age? I know when I discovered Iron Maiden, I tell this story on my channel. I've told it a bunch of times about coming down in the middle of the night. We had just gotten MTV and they were showing Iron Maiden live at the Rainbow, that concert with Paul Dianno. So that was my first exposure to Iron Maiden. Paul was the first singer for Iron Maiden I heard. I went out and I got the first album. Uh, he, uh, his style was always, I always thought Paul was the ultimate kind of barroom pub type of singer. He had that kind of that sound and that look to him. He wasn't somebody that ran around and jumped around on stage or anything, but he had that cool kind of look with the bullet belt and the leather and everything. And his voice was super cool. He had that sort of, it was kind of aggressive. He had a lot of punch and character to his voice, but he could also sing like Remember Tomorrow and stuff like that, where he could sort of pull back a little bit in his voice. So he had different things to his voice. I thought it fit the early Iron Maiden sound perfectly. That new wave of British heavy metal, them coming up through the pubs, fighting their way up and building up their fame and everything. And I remember being taken aback by Paul's look early on. And I was only 11 years old, so I didn't get the whole, okay, he was maybe influenced by the British punk scene and stuff like that. I just thought he looked different, and having short hair like that, I thought was kind of a bold statement, but I thought he looked super cool. I thought his voice was just great. And he's a huge part of heavy metal history. Those first two Iron Maiden records are so influential for so many bands, and it's so kicked off the 80s in a lot of ways. And so Paul just had this great, unique voice. I thought he really fit the sound of what Iron Maiden was all about in those early years. And even though I think everybody knew that he had health issues, it was still kind of surprising and it was still kind of shocking to hear that he had passed like this. It's kind of heartwarming that within, I think maybe the last year, there were those pictures of Steve and Paul meeting backstage and talking. There's some pictures of Bruce with Paul, so that was kind of heartwarming to see that. But it's sad and it's tragic to see him go like this. Such an influential, important singer and unique singer to heavy metal. So. Uh, Darren, what are your thoughts about Paul Dianno and his recent passing?
Um, I was sad. It's kind of an end of an era. I mean, for me, like you, that's when I got into Maiden. I got Killers for Christmas in 1981. Prior to that, I saw the ad for the Killers album in a issue of Cream or something, and so I mean that was my Iron Maiden, and I thought he looked cool. He obviously looked different from the rest of the band, but he was kind of front man slash mascot in a way, you know. Um, and I thought that was cool. He had black shirt, the studded wristbands and everything. He was an extension of the aesthetic, and he represented heavy metal. I mean, he was like a metal god. I also saw the Rainbow concert on MTV back in that day, and that was awesome. That blew me away, and he was even more effective on stage watching him on that concert. He was the voice of Iron Maiden for me for a long time, well, at least until Bruce joined. Um, and it wasn't an easy transition, but it wasn't necessarily a hard transition either because the music had sort of changed. The music evolved from where it was on Killers to where it went on Number of the Beast. But I always thought that there was nobody that could sing those songs the same way that Paul did. I don't want to hear Bruce Dickinson sing Phantom of the Opera or Wrathchild or Remember Tomorrow. Those songs are Paul Dianno's songs, and that's really important. And I think that's what makes him so profound is that you can have someone else join the band and take over vocals and maybe do the songs that you sang in the while you were in the band even better. But I just don't think as great a singer as Bruce is, he was never able to have that same sort of vibe and pull the songs off the same way that Paul did. So there was always, even as Maiden went on, there was always a part of me that kind of missed Paul Dianno, especially when the band would play some of those old songs. I was content to hear the band play the songs that they were, touring for on that album or moving forward. But I always kind of had to cringe when Bruce would sing Paul Dianno songs. So, that says a lot. That Paul definitely left his mark in Iron Maiden. As years went on, I tried to follow him. I tried to get into some of the things he was doing. The first solo album was just Dianno, was really AOR. It was okay, but it was a bit of a letdown from where he left off with Maiden. Yeah, that one. I have that. Battle Zone was pretty quiet. Actually, I think before that he was in the band Gog Magog with Pete Willis, formerly of Def Leppard. Neil Murray,
Clive Burr.
Clive Burr. Yeah, Clive Burr was joined him again on
Neil,
that.
Neil Murray.
Um,
Yeah. Yannick Gears is actually on this
Yannick
as well.
Gers, yeah, yeah, have an all-star lineup, and that was pretty cool. It's only an EP. The songs are kind of upbeat, up tempo, so it didn't really have the dark quality that I wanted to hear that from the time that he spent with Maiden. But it was cool. He sounded good. From there, he went to Battle Zone, and Battle Zone was okay. It didn't really knock me over, but I had a couple of their albums and I liked them enough. But the one album that I really did like, and I thought, there's other things in between, some stuff he did with Dennis Stratton and stuff like that, and some one-off stuff. Iron Man, I think, was one of the things he did with Dennis Stratton, former guitar player from Iron
A
Maiden,
couple of
as
couple of
well.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that I liked best that he did post Iron Maiden was the Killers band, Murder One. I think that's a great album, and I had the opportunity to see him live because I actually went to the concert to see Solitude Aeternus. I was friends with John Perez at the time, and we were talking, and he was telling me about that they were going to be doing a tour with Paul Dianno's Killers. So they had a show pretty close to me, and I went to check out Solitude Aeternus. But I was also interested in seeing what Paul Dianno was up to, and he was good, man. Sang material from the Murder One album, and of course he did some Maiden classics, and that was pretty cool. It was like, you know, it sort of took me back. I'm like, wow, this is actually like Paul Dianno singing "Running Free." I'm like, wow, this is cooler than I anticipated. I'm really enjoying this. After the show, Paul was there signing autographs. Guys were coming up to him with the Iron Maiden albums and stuff, and he was gracious, but you could tell that he's a little bummed out. He's a little salty about things. I didn't talk to him other than to say hello and that I enjoyed the set and whatnot. But I highly suspected that there was like some bitterness about not being in Maiden. Like he wished that he was still in Iron Maiden. That was really the main part of his career and everything that he's done since. It almost seemed like he was trying to recapture kind of a Maiden type of thing, or it would always go back to him doing Maiden songs or something that sort of sounded like Maiden. He was never really able to create his own identity beyond the Iron Maiden, the tenure that he was with Iron Maiden. So that's sort of unfortunate. Um, but on the upshot, I mean, I think any Maiden fan, when the news came out the other day, everybody was pretty gutted by it. It was like, oh my God. We knew he was in bad health, but it's one of those things where you just think some of these people are going to be around forever, and they pass away, and it's like, wow, like to me, it was because he was a part of my Iron Maiden. I mean, he took a piece of that with him when he went, and he also took a piece of my childhood. You know, the times we remember listening to the records and watching the concert on MTV. So it's kind of well, it's not kind of, it is sad. It's sad to see him go. But such is life. But he'll always be remembered. I mean, I always listen to Iron Maiden. Dianno Maiden is on frequent rotation here. You know, I mean, he'll always be alive in the music, and we'll always celebrate those records. You know, so it'll certainly outlast Paul Dianno, the individual. His legacy will live on for many, many years to come. So I guess that's the upshot.
Yeah. Tony?
Yeah, it was definitely a shock the other day. We knew he was in bad health, but I wasn't expecting him to die. You know, I thought, oh, he's gonna be around for a while. But yeah, I kind of got into Iron Maiden a little late. I was because I was really getting into metal around like 82, 83, discovering all these different bands and see Iron Maiden in the magazines and stuff. And I recall the first time I think I ever heard Iron Maiden. I didn't like it. Some guy was playing a tape, and I think it was Number the Beast, and I believe it was Invaders was the song. And I was just like, I don't like this, and just moved on. You know, it would take a few months to hear something else to make me actually like it. The MTV concert, we had got MTV the summer of '83, and that concert they showed the Live at the Rainbow show on a metal weekend one time with a bunch of other stuff, and that was really confusing because I think I'd seen the Run to the Hills video, and I was going, is that the same singer? Maybe he's got long hair and this is an older show. Did he cut his hair? I was just totally confused, but I liked it. I thought it was really good. You know, I was like, this is cool. And then, you know, found out some of the people I hung out with, nobody really listened to Iron Maiden, and it was more Ozzy and Kiss and Rat and whatever, you know, was out at that moment as far as the Van Halen and stuff. And someone had told me, no, they've got a different singer sang on their early records. And I remember asking a friend of mine, we were talking about trading some stuff at school. And I asked him, did he have Killers? And I was talking about the Kiss Killers, the Kiss record he called Killers. And I thought we were going to swap for that. He shows up at school with this. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So there's an Iron Maiden record called Killers. So he's, well, just take it home and listen to it. And I fell in love with it. And to this day, this and Number the Beast kind of teeter-totter back and forth, which is my favorite Iron Maiden record. I love both. I do love Number the Beast now. I love Invaders. But yeah, it teeters. And this one I always seem to go back to this one. And it's just such a great record. I loved, you know, so many great songs on this one. Murders at the Rue Morgue and Twilight Zone. I mean, Innocent Exile, Killers, the title track, of course. But I love Prodigal Son. That's so different. It's a very proggy song. Yeah. I always kind of hoped that, you know, Paul Dianno did a lot of records in his later years where he re-recorded Iron Maiden songs. And I always thought, man, he should do an unplugged album. And I'm surprised nobody ever got him to do that. And he could have done stuff like Prodigal Son and Strange World, and that would have been kind of cool, you know. But, you know, I moved on and became an Iron Maiden fan. And I did end up getting, I think the first thing I got the one of the Battle Zone, where I had this Battle Zone record when it was a new one. It picked it up, and it's pretty cool. I mean, but both of those albums are pretty cool. Children of Madness, they used to have a music video for that. I remember seeing that. Yeah. And then when Killers, when like Darren said, Murder One came out, and I picked this up. I thought it was great, and it's a good more return to form of what you're used to with Paul Dianno's sound, as far as, because the Battle Zone was a little more commercial sounding, and but this was a good solid record, and I thought this was really good as well. There was a live show that is in, it's the South American Assault and it's the Killers band, And John Gallagher from Raven is the bassist on this. And it's just a bunch of re-recordings of Iron Maiden songs. And John told me once, yeah, that wasn't live. We did that in the studio, and they put a audio track over a live audio track on it. I was like, oh man, there's so much energy on this record. I mean, it's not made in Japan by any means, but it's a good record. And I remember when this one came out, Ministry Society, it's like he wanted to be Pantera so bad. And a friend of mine had a little radio show on a local radio station here, and I brought this up one night, and we played it on the air and did a guess, like, can someone guess who this is? And everybody's going, that's Pantera. People were calling, that's Pantera, you know, for sure. And we had people fooled that it was the new Pantera record, but it's actually just Killers. But yeah, they did it pretty well though. It's not a bad record at all. It's just him trying to be, I guess, what was popular at the time, and everybody was kind of going in that direction. But I finally got to meet him in 2012. He did a tour, and it was some friends of mine on a band called Widow. They went out and did a run with him. It was Icarus Witch and Cauldron, and Icarus Witch was Paul Dianno's backing band. So their singer they do an Icarus Witch set, and then he would take a break, the singer, and Paul would come out in front of him, and they'd just do a whole Iron Maiden set. And it was great, man. They were really good. Paul was struggling. He was still walking and getting around then. I remember the night I saw him, he kept going over to the side of the stage and throwing up in a bucket. And he'd come back and he'd sing a little bit more. And he goes, don't ever eat at Bob Evans. You'll get food poisoning. But after the show, he sat in the dressing room, and there was a line of people, and they brought us in, you know, a couple at a time, and he signed whatever you had, and I got him to sign some records for me and some CDs and stuff. And I brought some stuff from my friend had mailed me some stuff to get signed, and I remember I had that Gaga Magog record, and he just looked at it and he was, oh God, you've got this bloody thing. This is horrible. This is one of the worst things I've ever recorded. You know, and he signed it and gave it back to me. I was like, yeah, you know, it belongs to a friend. And yeah, but he was super cool that night, very friendly. And a friend of mine was with me, and he's been into Iron Maiden since day one, since discovering that first record. And he told him, he says, Paul, he says, I love Bruce Dickinson, but you will always be the singer of Iron Maiden to me. He's in. Paul's like, oh, bloody hell, get something, gives him a hug, you know, just such a nice, big, just cool guy. So yeah, it was, you know, I was hoping he, you know, be able to recover from all this stuff he's been going through, maybe make a comeback. I mean, we all hope that maybe, you know, they've even mentioned if they ever do a final Iron Maiden show, they wanted to bring up, you know, everybody and have, you know, Paul and Blaze and everybody be a part of it. And yeah, that would have been wonderful to see, you know, but it's just not in the cards now.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, Butch wasn't able to join us, but I was able to record with him earlier today. So here's Butch's thoughts on Paul Dianno's passing.
So, yeah, I guess it's shocking. I mean, in a way, because he was so young that we lost Paul Dianno. I think anyone that's seen him over the last so many years could tell he was not in great health. It was sad to watch because he was an important part of many of our lives. My first experience with Dianno goes back to the 80s. Oddly enough, I guess it's because of my age. Like when I discovered Iron Maiden, I actually didn't know at first they had a singer before Bruce. My first experience with Maiden was seeing videos for Run to the Hills, a Number of the Beast on MTV, and then they used to have those Friday night or Saturday night concerts on MTV, and I remember they would have ads for them during the week that this was the concert coming up. And the one I remember seeing an ad, there was one coming up and was going to be Maiden. And I think it was Maiden, Dio, and Black Sabbath. There was it ended up being a half an hour of Maiden and then 15 minutes of Dio and 15 minutes of Sabbath, something like that. Anyway, I remember in that little clip, like this different singer with, shorter hair, all leather, um, or like all black, and the gauntlets on his arms, and just like tough looking dude. Like, and he was singing it was that they showed a clip of them doing Wrathchild, and I was like, it's amazing. Sometimes you can just from like part of a song, you're like you hear part of it, and you're like drawn to it. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Now I want to hear the whole song. So I watched that show, and it was like I thought it was totally cool. I mean, I was just getting into metal at the time. Maiden was certainly one of the bands in the mix early on, so it was interesting to me. I didn't understand how band dynamics worked at that time. People coming in and out. So, um, you know, Dianno, oddly enough, like for me, I've always been I probably overall, like I've been a fan since the Dickinson years, but oddly enough for me, my the two records that I think that Maiden did that are absolutely perfect are 10 out of 10s are the first two records. Um, there's just something about them that speak to me. So there might be higher points, like "Hallowed Be Thy Name" is my favorite Maiden song, and I like "Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner," some of those more epic kind of things. But there's just a street level, just metal. I know people talk about the little bit of the punk edge or whatever. I see it as more of like it's more raw than, which I guess is where people get the punk thing from. To me, it's always been metal. Um, but Paul was so cool. His voice fit that material so well. It's like he first of all, to see the guy like in the videos of him. Now I never get to see them live, which is a bummer. I was just a couple years behind. I have friends that saw Maiden with Dianno singing, and I wish I would have gotten to see that, because if you watch the videos, like he just exudes like cool. He's got this swagger when he's on stage. It's a different thing than what Bruce brought to the band or what Blaze brought to the band. He just had this thing going on that was just I thought he was totally cool. Um, and one of the things I liked about his voice was, first of all, I mean, it was tough enough to fit metal. I mean, he had like he could have like this heavy, not heavy, but like he had this voice that bordered on like he had this raw energy, this primal kind of thing going on where it fit the heavier stuff. But then at the same time, there was an emotionality to his voice. You look at like the verses in Remember Tomorrow, or even the middle part of Charlotte the Harlot. Like he could do these things, different things with his voice that I thought were cool. There was there was that emotional quotient to his voice that I think that he brought to the music that gave it some, that set him apart from other singers. First of all, he was I think he was unique, which there was a group of those singers from that new wave of British metal that I think set themselves apart a bit, and I think Paul was one of them. Biff from Saxon was certainly one of them, and Bruce, obviously. Joe Elliott had his own thing going on, but Paul, I can't think of anyone that ever like really was able to like duplicate what he just had his own vibe. Paul is Paul. Like no one, he sounded like himself, and I don't think anyone's really sounded like him since. Certainly his influence, they've influenced a ton of people. You don't have to go very far to find people that were like hugely influenced by the first couple periods of those first couple records that Maiden did. So much good music there. It's a shame like that the catalog with Paul, is just like these few, just couple of these aren't going to come up, but just the debut and Killers and a few singles. There's like an unofficial of the Live Plus One, got women in uniform on it, which I always liked. I like that cover. And I always liked Twilight Zone, which I think is great. I had to get this single because when I bought Killer, like I always loved Twilight Zone. It's one of my favorite Maiden songs. And when I got the vinyl for Killers that I had, now I had a cassette, it had Twilight Zone on it, so I got the vinyl. of it years later, like when I was, plugging holes in my collection, and lo and behold, Twilight Zone's not on here, so I had to go get the single to make up for it. Some of my favorite songs come from this era of the band, Phantom of the Opera, Charlotte the Harlot, Remember Tomorrow, Wrathchild, Murders in the Rue Morgue. I mean, you could go on. There's classic after classic. I know Paul had his demons, and we'll never know. There's the never ending debate of would Maiden have achieved what they achieved if Paul had stayed in the band. Certainly, he had a great voice at the time, so I'm not saying that they, it maybe might have looked different, but we'll never know. But he was great. In Iron Maiden, I didn't follow his career as well over the years. I'm not as well acquainted with like the Battle Zone stuff and the Dianno solo record that he did. I think I had Killer's Murder One at one time. Some of the later records didn't do for me what this early material did, but you know, in terms of being one of the most influential singers that the metal era has seen, you have to rank Paul high. People don't always think of him right away when they think of, you always hear Halford, Dickinson, Dio. But I mean, you really have to look at like what Paul, accomplished with Maiden in those first records. Like they really built and built quickly. And those songs, there's some of those songs are still in the set list that he had a big hand in. And I think, in terms of his voice, which was great. And then again, like he just had a vibe about him, especially in those early days. That was cool. And it's a shame that at 66, it's tough that he had a hard life. And I'm sure we all would have liked it to have been different, and for him not to be gone at 66. But he definitely left his mark, and everyone's we'll all remember Paul Dianno and what he gave to music.
All right, well, there you go. A sad day in metal history. Iron Maiden is such a huge band. I mean, each one of you guys, we all kind of said it to, in different ways that it's really Iron Maiden is such an important band to heavy metal, to us personally. So to have somebody like this pass, it's sad. It does feel like a part of your youth, because this Iron Maiden, those early Iron Maiden records are so important to our metal history, our metal journey, and to heavy metal history in general. So, Paul Dianno, rest in peace.